My name is Suzanne McAllister, and I'm an organizer and member of the Vegan Spirituality Group of Philadelphia. The group was founded about a dozen years ago by Lisa Levinson, and we now have chapters throughout the United States. And our basic tenet is that we view our veganism as a spiritual path. Today, I'm initiating a series called Interviews, and Joel has kindly agreed to be my inaugural interviewee. And I'm titling this interview, "The Man Who Used to Dislike Cats." So with that, welcome, Joel, and thank you for being willing to do this. And I guess maybe my first question, just for you to tell me a little bit about yourself, if you're willing, where you live and what you do, and anything that you think help people to get to know you just a little bit.
Sure. I live in Horsham, Pennsylvania. I've been here 13 years. Originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up, went to school, and I'm an accountant. Married for 11 years, together for 13.
Okay. Lucky 13.
I think it's 13. We have 3 lovely cats who I adore. And then I grew up with dogs. Actually, very rarely had encounters with cats. I remember my one neighbor had a cat. And the funny thing is, I never really knew they had a cat because you never saw the cat. I guess like any cat, you realize sometimes when you have company over, they hide. They get a little scared.
Yes. Yes.
So that really very limited. Actually, I shouldn't say that. We did get a cat a few times. I shouldn't say a few times. Once or twice when we had mice. My mother was petrified of them. And it seemed to do the trick, but after we got rid of the cat, I don't remember all the details.
Yeah. Well, let me first of all, maybe one of the 3 cats or more than one of the 3 cats will make an appearance today. That would be lovely. So my first question is, how did you get involved with the Vegan Spirituality Group of Philadelphia?
Well, obviously, it was through my wife.
Okay.
She was the main driver of actually leading us down that path of veganism. I was a little more reluctant at first. I understand that I embraced it. It was more or less the practicality, maybe, of it at the beginning. I wasn't 100% vegan. I would say now I'm pretty much almost all vegan.
Well, what was your diet like, or how did you approach food and eating before you met Lahia? Were you aware of veganism? Were you aware of vegetarianism? I mean, what did you think about it?
I probably thought they were loony people, like off the charts kind of.
Yeah.
That was my stereotypical perception of what.
That's such an interesting thing, Joel. What is it, do you think, and I may have had the same impression, I have to think about it, but what is it, do you think, that makes people who are not vegan and don't know much about it think that vegans are a little loony?
That's a good question. And, I would say most people are ignorant. And I don't mean it in a bad way. They just never learned anything about it. And just you just see on TV, movies, whenever they bring up veganism, it's always an extreme kind of, can't think of the right word. View, yes, but stereotypical kind of extreme almost. Veganism is more of like an extreme kind of point of view.
And now that you have been, like you said, with Lihia for 13 years, and I'm not sure how many of those years she was vegan, but you've obviously become much more familiar with it. How do you think about it now?
Well, I think I finally made that connection, and that connection created a bond where when I'm not around other like-minded people, especially where I work or whatever, I don't think I'm embarrassed to say it anymore. I think I used to be a little bit embarrassed to say, yeah, I'm vegan because my wife is vegan.
Okay.
Because it's not, I guess it's kind of a macho thing,
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Well,
I think I've grown and matured in that respect, because I do understand it. I embrace it, the whole philosophy and what you're actually trying to do. And, it's just little things, when we're watching TV or things, you see that just people don't, because they don't know. They don't make that connection, because the whole industry has done a good job of kind of separating the ugly part of how that actual milk, how that meat gets to your dining room table, basically.
right. So I think what you're saying is that in the past you could have looked at something and you wouldn't have thought about it, but now you will watch something on TV and you are conscious of what had to happen in order to get
Exactly.
that burger.
Yes.
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 Yeah. And so your whole orientation has changed.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think when we first started talking, you said, I'm primarily vegan or something like that. So do you think of yourself as vegan or on the way to being vegan? How would you describe yourself?
Yeah. It's interesting. I guess it's almost like coming out in a way. It's, I don't think I've ever officially, people know that I live the lifestyle. I don't know if I've necessarily said to people I work with that, yes, I'm vegan per se. I think they kind of know it. The choices of what I eat and stuff like that. But yeah, and also I have a good friend. He knows I live the lifestyle, but I think people may have the perception that if something were to happen with my wife, like she's the driver, the motivator,
Yeah.
I might go back to the way
They don't quite trust that it's you who is making this decision now. Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the questions, go ahead.
Say, I guess I haven't, and I haven't come out fully in a way and said, no, this, accept, this is who I am now, I've changed, whatever. I haven't really fully done that
yet. And can you say a little bit about what your hesitation is?
Maybe because of the way people perceive, I guess, goes back to the perception of being vegan, like almost even a little bit weak. That kind of, yeah.
So it's and I was going to add, one of the questions I had for you is whether you've had any negative experiences with people, coworkers, friends, family, since you have made this shift, even if you're not actually coming out and saying, oh, I'm vegan, but they see how you live. Have you had any negative experiences? Have you had positive experiences? What's that been like?
I would say I would say it's kind of in between. I wouldn't say I've had any negative or I've had really any positive. Um, because also I work for a seafood importer, so that's kind of a contradiction right there.
As
You know, so that makes it, they could bring in sometimes seafood in. If they order out, I usually get something different, and I assume they kind of know because I get a vegetarian kind of thing. Um,
does
but
anybody ever ask you?
about that,
Yeah, when you're ordering and they're all, well, here you are, and I had forgotten that you work for a seafood importer. Does anybody ever say, hey, Joel, you never taste our product? Or,
um, that's, I, you know what? Uh, I have in the past. I think it's not until recently that I've kind of made that change where I would just participate, just so I wouldn't stand out.
yes,
Say in the last couple years, especially when they're ordering or something for lunch, company lunch, and I would get something vegan or vegetarian. No, I don't think they've really ever said anything.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
uh, you know.
But it's interesting to hear you talk about the hesitation, which I certainly felt in the early days about, like you said, sticking out, standing out. I'm not going to order because I don't want to be the only one who's saying, well, I'm not going to have what everybody else is having.
And then,
And
and then sometimes I think like you also have to explain it. It's almost like you have to defend yourself.
mhm.
In a sense, really, I was always of the mind. I don't care. I don't care if you're eating garbage. It's why. What do you even have to comment? That's my choice. Why But especially when you go vegan, it's not uncommon to say, oh, you don't eat. They'll say, oh, you don't eat meat or this or that. Um, yeah, I guess, and so in some ways also to try to avoid that, you just go
Yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. My recollection is that a couple of years ago when you were vacationing in Montreal, that you and Lihia came upon I guess you would call it a demonstration, Cube of Truth.
Correct.
And, um, and my understanding is it had an impact on you. I wondered if you might uh, explain what the Cube of Truth is to people who might not know what that is and what happened.
Uh, well, it's we were walking along a busy street and um, we saw a bunch of people. I think they were dressed in all black and they had these masks on, some of them, and they were just holding these videos, the screens, a video showing face factory farming and what really happens to the animals. And the interesting part is that I guess I don't know, I'm just guessing, they must have decided that instead of being, um, you know, what's the word? Like outgoing, like forceful, trying to send a message to people. This is bad. This is bad. With the difference that I've seen is they're letting people come to them and talk to them. They're silent. I guess they're really covering themselves because they want people to focus on the screen and what is actually happening. So
And what happened to you when you actually saw?
well, I've seen my wife, I've seen videos prior to that. But again, it's more or less, it's just strengthening that bond, making the connection, um, you know, really understanding, appreciating what people are trying to do and how they love and feel for animals.
Mhm.
And, I guess a lot, and also, I just would have mentioned before how the hypocrisy with people. And again, it goes back to knowledge, because everyone was someplace before, right?
Mhm.
before. You were there before you became a vegan.
That's right.
But how they don't make the connection in that, they look at their dog and their cats and any other, maybe they have birds and others, but they just don't see that connection, especially when they hear in Korea or China how they eat dogs. And I've always said, what's wrong with that? So they eat dogs. That's not, what do we do? Look at all the animals we eat.
Hmm.
And
in other words, you're saying you think it's hypocritical for us to be saying, how can they do that when we're eating cows and chickens and pigs, and what makes it okay to eat that but not a dog or a cat?
of course, yeah, right. Just because we say so. Right.
Yeah. And then I believe I was with you when you participated in actually being part of a Cube of Truth in Bucks County. And I wonder, had you ever done anything activist before? Is that something you've done in other areas of your life, political or?
Never, is never active in anything like that. No.
So tell me about that, because that's a really interesting shift.
Yeah, it wasn't easy for me, because it was uncomfortable because I've never been in that kind of role. I guess the fact that and maybe that's part of the reason why they do it, the fact that you wear a mask, so you're anonymous in a way, obviously made it a little easier. And, and I've also, along my evolution, I reached a point where, I figured, let me give this a try, see how it works, see if we can at least, what they say, plant the seed in a few people.
I'm curious, Joel, are you surprised at the change in you?
Well, I would say yes and no, because I think I've always just been aware, maybe more so. I remember years ago, maybe in my 30s, or I went vegetarian for a while, and people would ask, and I remember I used to say, why do we always have to eat meat and chicken and that stuff? We have so many, there's so many animals that we're killing because of this. I don't know if I used the word killing. I don't remember exactly. But, so I've always been a little bit, I think I even said on a date once with my wife, something there, I don't know how it came up, they're serving duck, right? And I'm thinking to myself, you got chickens, cows, all different kind of. Do we need to have duck too? You can't leave them alone. Like there's so. And then and it's funny when I started working, and again, people could look at this and say, well, isn't that a contradiction? Again, going back to this, and I wouldn't disagree. This,
Yeah.
That's another show, like Oprah used to say. But forget my point. What was my? Right. So I've always been kind of aware, and even early on, even though part of it was convenience in terms of just easier to have a couple eat a certain way than having to make separate meals. And I didn't mind it because the food was good. That's another misconception about the food. The food,
Yeah.
I love the food. It's tasty. I enjoy it.
Well, you're blessed to be married to somebody who loves to cook and who's a good cook.
Exactly right.
You are blessed. We should all have a Lahia in our lives.
And you know what? I think it forced her because she now had to really learn about cooking, which she didn't have to do before. You go out, you buy a steak, you buy ham, you buy whatever. Here, you really have to plan. And
So is Lahia in the room with you or not? Oh, there she is. So can both of you, yes, and maybe tilt your screen a little bit because I'm only seeing a little bit more. That's perfect. Wonderful. So This is Lihia. Do you want to say hello, Lihia?
That's me. Yeah. Hi.
And so, Lihia, when I introduced Joel, I said I was entitling this segment as the man who used to dislike cats, which I got from you. And I'm wondering if you can say a little bit about what Joel was like when you met him before he started on this most recent journey. Although I am hearing, Joel, that you had some tendencies before you met Lihia, which I didn't know. But what Joel was like and what he's like now in general, but also with regard to cats.
Well, in regard to cats, I remember we were living together in this apartment, and the neighbors right across the street. I always love cats. We always have cats at home. And I remember I told him when we buy a house, I would like to get a cat. And I remember his reaction was like, cats, cats. And we got the house, and I said, well, it's time for us to adopt a cat. And he said, we need to paint first. So he was like making excuses, right? And finally, when he had no excuse, we adopted Benito, who was mainly, cats, they choose their person, right? So
Yes.
Benito was mine from the beginning. And then I decided, you know what? Let's get the second cat. Benito is alone for a long time. We both go to work. And he was totally reluctant. He said, no, there is no way we're going to get a second cat. And if you want a second cat, you're going to do it your own, but I have nothing to do with this cat. Okay, so we got Nina.
And I went along.
Finally, he went along.
Well, we went together.
Yeah,
we went
true.
together to look at cats and
But
stuff.
he wasn't convinced until we got Nina. And Nina just wrapped around him her paw. And Nina, he can tell you more about Nina, but then slowly we decided, well, what if we start fostering? And we foster, and pretty much he is the one who takes care of the whole thing, because
Yes.
he takes care of the cats, and
I take them to the vet.
he takes them to the vet.
I make the
Right.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I really enjoy it.
Yes.
You know.
And he was volunteering, and he was going in the morning to the adoption center, and he would spend a couple hours with the cats, cleaning their litter boxes, feeding them, etc., etc., etc. Maybe he doesn't see that from himself, but from outside, from what I see, it has been a good growth and evolution in his view of everything. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you described your change in terms of your diet and lifestyle, but also that something happened inside of you and you were an activist and volunteering at a shelter. And you also foster, I know, baby mamas with their babies. And then the ones who had no mama, you had for a while. So you took care of my princess when I needed coverage for a month. So, and I know it's not just Lihia. I know this is a team effort. And you have Tomasan now as well.
Yes, she was actually a foster.
Yes.
Who never got adopted, and we always felt bad. And
because she's black.
She's all black, so.
Well, I have a failed foster who's not all black. She's just, I knew she wasn't going to get adopted. Well, she was adopted and returned. So that's what happens. That's what happened. She's mine now, just like your three are yours.
Exactly.
So I just, anything else that either of you would like to say before we wrap things up?
Well, what I would say is maybe he doesn't remember, but when we were in Montreal, that we saw the Cube of Truth, right? I knew what it was because I used to see them on Facebook, but he wasn't really very aware of what they were doing. So while I was talking to one of the activists, he was watching the videos. And probably you don't remember, but I remember when we were leaving, he was asking me questions. What they do with the pigs, and is that what happens to chickens? So I remember, maybe he doesn't remember, but he was kind of shocked of things that probably you didn't know before.
I guess maybe in that kind of detail, I guess in, I guess maybe, I know it's, I think I knew at some level, but to actually see it right in front of you,
Yes. Yes.
you know, it just changes your whole perspective and puts it in in perspective.
And it's not easy.
No.
It's
No.
not easy to see it and to know it, because once you see it and know it, you cannot unknow it.
No.
And so I think it takes a lot of courage to be willing to actually learn and see.
Yeah,
So,
I think if I recall, they had a video on fur.
Everything.
Yeah, that was disturbing.
yes,
Yes, like
Yes.
a lot of it is. Yeah.
so much of it is, yes. Well, I want to thank you for making time and for trusting me to ask you these questions and to record it. And I'm excited. My hope is that we can share a recording like this with people who will get an idea of what it's like to go from living ordinarily with what we call the standard American diet, and your evolution, your transition from living the way all of us did, except for the few who are born into vegan families, and those are very few, to how you made the changes that you did. And so I really appreciate your willingness to talk and to be part of this inaugural session. And Lihia, thank you for being part of it too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the
Sure.
interview.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. It was fun. I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.